that it's not just my mic that's not working. There's no audio whatsoever. But it's not just mine.
I just heard you on my computer.
So, oh, you know what? Maybe I didn't have this on, and maybe if this is off, that kills the audio on everything.
Maybe.
You suppose?
Maybe.
Bachman, can you hear us now?
No, somebody can hear us.
Okay.
We can hear you now, so maybe the mic was off.
Yeah. How about that? You know? Whew.
Thank you to our faithful followers.
Yes. Thank you, Chris, for the save. So, all right. Oh man, we're having a hard time getting unhooked from the plow here on Ask the Agronomist this morning, and unless you're a good lip reader, not a rip leader, a lip reader.
Third time's a charm.
That's right. I'm getting tired of doing my intro, Heather. But unbeknownst to you all, this is now the third time we've started this episode, and even more. I started with kind of a joke that I felt very disorganized this morning, and I felt much like a college football playoff team that got a first round bye. They did not fare well in the college playoffs. As a general rule, Indiana was an exception to that. Indiana is an exception to everything. Go Hoosiers. And they're my adopted home team since Illinois did have a good bowl game, won their second bowl game in a row. I believe that's the first time ever. So good for the Illini as well. But like much of the rest of the country, I've become a Hoosier fan over the last few weeks here in the college football playoff season. So looking forward to enjoying the game. What is that next Monday night, I guess. So anyway, welcome to season 6 of Ask the Agronomist. Now that you can hear me, and I do have some. I'm not a New Year's resolution kind of person, but I do have some goals for improving Ask the Agronomist. I guess goal number 1, Heather, would be have our crap together so we can. Things work right in the morning. So yeah, we had the trusty old method here that I was getting ready to pull out. That was going to be plan. I don't know if it was C or D. It wasn't. We were past plan B. But anyway, Heather got us going. So appreciate her support here. We're still trying to learn this new system where we're using an iPad and it's nice, get some better video quality. Heather is also experimenting with some technology that would allow us to have a guest that is at a different location and you can see us both on the same screen at the same time, which sounds really cool. But given the trouble we have with this, Heather, it scares the hell out of me that we're gonna try something even more complicated than what we're doing here today. But anyway, that would be really cool to make it easier to have more guests, and the guest and I would not have to be in the same place. And all my previous guests are going to be really jealous because they would have much rather not been in the same place as me and probably done it on their own as well. But so Jim Donnelly, if you're upset by that, we'll have you back on as a video guest, and you won't have to have me in your house. So. With that, that's one improvement that we're going to hope to make this year. Another thing we're going to continue to try to do is increase our live audience. And I get it. A lot of people like to watch the program. A lot of you don't even watch it. A lot of you listen to it, as you're driving as more of a podcast, even though there's video to go along with it. And I would agree. I am much better on radio than I am on TV. So I get it. Just the listening is the best part. But I have, since we started the program, the goal was to have a lot of people watching live so we'd get a lot of questions live. And so I think that really improves the quality of the program if I'm answering your questions as opposed to just going through the ideas that I wanted to cover. So we're going to continue to explore ways to get larger live audiences. Appreciate everybody who watches the program, whether you watch it live or recorded, but just so we can get more questions and more interactions, it would kind of always been a goal to have a larger live audience. The other thing that I want to encourage people to do, and I know I did this a lot in the first year when we were first starting, and I've maybe kind of gotten out of this habit. If you have ideas of things that you would like us to talk about, let your FSR know, let your dealer know, let Heather or I know if you can reach out to us directly. Whoever at Bayer you can get get your request to. I'd like to start maybe like doing a segment where we discuss something that a viewer submitted a topic or something like that would be kind of fun to do too. So just if you have ideas of how we can improve the show, other than if your idea is a different host, I'm probably not interested in that idea. But other than that, if you have ideas to improve the show, please let us know. So I wanted to do some recognition here and kind of go through the results, just briefly, not entirely. You can go online and search this out if you want to. So the NCGA Yield Contest, which is a big deal in the corn world. Commodity Classic is coming up. When is that? I think it starts February 24th. I think. The only reason I remember that is that's my birthday. And Marie's trying to talk me into going to Commodity this year. So I may go to Commodity for the first time this year. I haven't committed to that yet, but she is, as you know, Marie can be very persuasive, and she is encouraging me to go. So anyway.
So we could do Commodity Classic live Ask the Agronomist.
We
did just check the calendar, Lance. We could do that.
We could. Okay. Well, and Dr. Bilo will be there. We could get him back on again. So that sounds really complicated, Heather. But
we can do it, Lance. Because I will be there as well.
Oh. Huh. Plot thickens.
The plot thickens.
Okay.
Stay tuned for more.
Yeah. So anyway, back to our NCGA recap. So very, very, very appreciative of all of our customers who take the time and effort and energy to enter the NCGA Yield Contest. We do our kind of local Yield Chasers Yield Contest here. That's a little easier to participate in than the NCGA contest is. The NCGA, you got to have things buttoned up. If you do well enough, you have to have judges, you have to have things certified, and rightfully so. It's a national contest, and they want to make sure everything is up to hoil. But once again, DeKalb had a stellar year in the NCGA Yield Contest, so I'm very proud of that. So there's 27 national winners, so there's 9 categories, first, second, and third in each of the 9 categories. So there's 27 national winners. We had 15 out of the 27, which is amazing, and this is also kind of cool. Now FSRs do not throw things at Heather and I, because I'm going to mention a sold out hybrid here, and I know all you guys hate it when I talk about sold out hybrids that are driving you crazy. But of the 15 national winners we had, 12 of them were one hybrid. That is the number one selling hybrid for the DeKalb brand in the nation. Sell over 1 million bags, and my FSRs tell me that they need 1.2 million because 1 million's not enough to cover the demand. That would be 6835. So very, very, very cool. At the state level, we had 97 DeKalb entries that took a first in state. We had 82 DeKalb entries that took a second in state, and we had 67 DeKalb entries that took a third in state, which is cool. And then dialing in here in Illinois, I'm gonna give special shout outs to 6 people. So Jared Brown actually took, and these are in no particular order. We had 2 national winners in Illinois. One would be Jared Brown, who actually won kind of they added a class. They call it Class J. It's the efficiency class, or the ROI class, or the class where you're limited to how much fertilizer you can use. So you can't just pour it all on. And that's kind of been, one of the criticisms. I don't necessarily believe it's a fair criticism of the contest, but a lot of people scoff at, well, yeah, but how much money are those guys spending to get those yields? And are they really making money? It's hard to lose money when you raise 400 bushel corn. Now you can lose money when you try to raise 400 bushel corn and it makes 250. That sometimes doesn't work out the way you wanted it to. But kudos to Jared Brown, got 3rd place in Class J, again with 6835, a yield of 308.2. I'm doing some rounding here, so they carry these yields out to like 4 decimal points, which I think is a bit silly, quite honestly. So I rounded. Troy Uphoff, who the Uphoff name is always in the NCGA results, placed third nationally in Class D with, again, 68.35 with a yield of 348.2. And the different classes, if you're familiar with them, I don't have them all here in front of me, but they separate it out based on, do you irrigate, do you not? What kind of tillage system are you doing? So they've got these 9 different classes to try to make it a little more fair, because it really wouldn't be fair to compare irrigated to non-irrigated acres. So that's why they've got all the different classes. And then at the state level, so we've got state winners and national winners. At the state level, Trent Uphoff had a first in Class F with 6606, which, pay attention, FSRs, I just mentioned a hybrid that you've got plenty of. So you can all get a hold of Trent Uphoff and ask him how to get 6606 to yield 346.5 bushels per acre, and you can all be happy with that. So congratulations to Trent. Greg McClure had a first in Class I with, again, 68.35 of 308.2. Hang on, FSRs. This one's going to be a little bumpy. Alan Johnston, who not too far from Monmouth here, had a second at the state level in Class D with the biggest pain point for all of my FSRs this year, 114.99. Very, very hard to get. If you're a farmer and somebody has promised you 114.99, you could probably sell it on the black market. That's illegal, but you could probably do it. I've got some FSRs that might trade you 2 for 1 just to get their hands on some more 114.99. And then Ryan Albin, I believe, had a third in state in Class B, again with 68.35 of 330.4 bushels. So congratulations to all the state winners, all the national winners. Thank you for all the good farmers planting DeKalb, making us look good, entering our products in the NCGA yield contest. It is a tremendous amount of work. A lot of people, sign up, but then don't go through with the harvest, or they think their yield's not good enough, they're not going to win, so they don't bother with it. It takes a lot of effort to follow through with what it takes to even enter the contest, let alone win at the state and national level. So a lot of these folks will get free trips to Commodity Classic this year, and they'll get to see Heather there, and maybe even me if I decide to go. A lot of people go to that, I understand, so you may not know who Heather is in the crowd, but you're really missing out if you don't know Heather. So we do a yield contest internally for Asgrow. So there is no soybean equivalent to the NCGA yield contest, but as a brand, Asgrow does a national yield contest, and I wanted to recognize those folks. And I did a little analysis of the Asgrow yield contest, and I just sorted out the yield entries that made over 100 bushel. So just kind of set that as a goal. And I thought it was interesting. We had 29 different people that yielded 100 plus, which is cool. There were 16 different varieties involved in those 29 different yields. They occurred in 12 different states. And I'll give a shout out to 36XF4, which one of my favorite products, actually probably my favorite product that was getting planted in 2025. 34XF6 is actually my favorite product today, but it was just in plots in 25. It will be sold for the first time in 26. So if you care what Lance thinks, try to plant some 34XF6. But in this year's contest, we had 7 of the 29 yields over 100 bushel were 36XF4. And that was the highest number for any particular variety. Now, it didn't have the highest overall yield. I'll give a shout out to a grower in Indiana for that with another variety that I like. The other cool thing, so I said we had 12 different states. The 12 states were Illinois, Indiana, Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, Virginia, Georgia, Ohio, Iowa, Alabama, Nebraska, and Maryland. And I'm also proud to say that Illinois had 6 yields in the contest over 100 bushel, more than any other state. Far more than Iowa. So just so you know, the Iowa and Illinois like to battle back and forth on who raises the most soybeans, who raises the best soybeans. In our yield contest, Illinois wins. So with six entries over 100 bushel. Second behind us in wins was actually Arkansas with 4 over 100 bushel. Indiana also had 4. Iowa had 2. So anyway, with that, so the Illinois high yield, Jeff Beam, thank you, Jeff, Carlinville, Illinois, 36XF4, again, my favorite, 126.4. Has some damn good beans. And the high overall was actually a gentleman by the name of Jeff Anthus, or I'm sorry, Josh Anthus, Sanborn, Indiana. I don't know where Sanborn, Indiana is. I don't know Josh. I do know the bean that he raised, 40XF5, which also set a record in Dr. Belo's yield trials this year. And I don't think 40XF5 sold out. So FSRs, if there's a run on 40XF5 now, I think you can cover that. 134.5 bushel soybeans. That's some beans there. So congratulations to all of our yield contest winners. Yield contests are, some people say they're fake. Some people say they're artificial. Some people say they don't represent reality. You can have your opinion on that. They're a lot of work, and I appreciate people who go to the effort to do them. So thank you. All right. So let's, any questions from anybody? Okay. All right. So somebody's probably going to ask me why their beans didn't yield 134.5 bushel, and we could talk about that. So on on your farm this time of year, you're making your final plans for the 2026 growing season. We are in the midst, as a seed company, of making our final plans for the 2027 growing season. And this is a little exercise that we used to call Y+1, which made sense to nobody except people in the company. Now we call this process, we go through our future season forecast. And I'm not looking for sympathy, because I know you guys, it's up to us to figure all this stuff out. But I did just want to give you a little bit of a glimpse as to what that process looks like and how impossible it is to be perfect with it. So at this time of year, I'm rolling new products out to our dealers and FSRs, so they're familiar with the stuff that they can sell for the first time ever in 2027. And there's always a lot of new products. There's always a lot of excitement around new products. We also every year retire products. And when we retire something, that means it will not be available next year. So there's a list of hybrids that are on that retire list that we're probably going to sell out of in 2026. We're not going to grow them again, and so they won't be available in 2027. So people have to take that into account. We've also got products that we consider growth products. So 114.99 would be a growth product. That would be a product that we don't have enough of right now. We're going to grow more of it, so we have more of it to sell in 27 than we are for 26. There are also products that kind of just stay flat, keep selling about the same amount as we have, and there are products that decline. So you got products moving every which way. So you're bringing in the new stuff, you're taking out some old ones, you're increasing this one, you're decreasing that one, and you got to make all that add up to the right amount of stuff. So in addition to all of that, we think about things like, how much extra should we grow to make sure we've got enough? Because a really, really good way to have a very unprofitable seed business is to grow too much supply. Carryover inventory in corn has ruined many a seed company because there's a lot of expense in that. You may have noticed that your local equipment dealership doesn't like to inventory a lot of parts anymore. It's because it costs a lot of money to have that stuff sitting around. Well, as the guy who's got to pay for it, how much that stuff costs. And so having that stuff sitting around, having seed corn, you also know very well how much seed corn costs. Having bags of seed corn sitting in cold storage, over the year until next year, some of that stuff goes bad. It's just not good. So every seed company out there is trying to manage that inventory as tightly as they can. So sometimes we guess wrong. So, another variable in this whole big equation is, how many acres of corn are you going to plant in 2027? You don't know. We don't know either. The government thinks they do. Other people think they know. And yeah, we know within plus or minus 5 million acres, but, plus or minus 5 million acres is a lot of seed to plant or not plant that 5 million acres. So that variable is tricky. What are the seed acres we plant in 26 to grow the seed for 27? What are they going to yield? We've got estimates. We actually have it estimated down to the female inbred. We know what each different inbred normally yields, but obviously, just like on your farm, there's a range. So we go with the average. How good will seed quality be? Don't know that either. And that influences. If seed quality is not good, maybe only 75% of what you produce is worth selling. If seed quality is really good, maybe 95% of what you produce is worth selling. So that's a big variable as well. And then we look at how many acres will DeKalb sell in 27? Will we sell more? Will we sell less? That influences how much seed we need. How many seed acres will be lost due to some misfortune? Either a human error, hailstorm, tornado. We lose seed fields every year that we planted them, thought we were going to get X number of units off of that field, and you get a goose egg. And then probably the one that drives me the craziest as an agronomist is, what will the impact of the performance of products in 2026 be on their demand from you in 2027? And I want to tell a little story here. And FSRs, don't shoot me. I hope this helps you more than it hurts you. But I'm going to tell the story of 114.99 and why you're all pissed at us right now, because we don't have any 114.99 to sell you. So 114.99 came out, was in plots the first year in 2023. Chris Carlisle and I each had an opportunity to look at about 8 plot bags of 114.99, and it came late. So it came out of winter, it arrived late. It only got planted in some of our later planted plots. It wasn't in a lot of plots, but the plots that it was in, it was dominant in those plots. And it was dominant in breeder trials that year. And it had been very good in breeder trials the year before in 2022. So it was riding 2 or 3 years of outstanding performance. And so we were very excited about 114.99 as a new hybrid in the winter of 2023-24. We didn't have much to sell in 2024, but we had a little bit, and we sold what we could, and we put it in as many. Wait a minute. I'm off a year. No, I'm not. No, that's right. So in 2024 would have been the first year that we could have sold, a little bit of 114.99. We put it in every plot we had in 24, 114.99. That was the year we had a lot of corn leaf aphids, record amount of corn leaf aphids here in record numbers, record early, caused a lot of yield damage to certain hybrids that they seem to prefer. 114.99 was not the only hybrid that aphids preferred, but it was the one that we were really excited about that they liked. So in 2024, if you planted 114.99 early enough that it wasn't attractive to aphids, it was as good as it was the year before. It wasn't quite as healthy in 24 as it was in 23, but the yield was still there. However, if you planted it after about the 3rd of May, and there was quite a bit of corn in 24 that was planted after the 3rd of May. We had a lot of Heather's adjusting, and
You're fine.
Okay, all right.
You're getting a little high on the screen. So keep going on the
she makes me nervous when she's working with stuff, because I think maybe we're off the air. So okay, so we're still going. So I'll go back to my 114.99 story. So 2024 comes along. We have aphids. We have the difference between good 114.99 and bad 114.99 in 2024 based on aphids was about 80 bushel. It was significantly off where it had bad aphids. We learned a lot about aphids that year. We learned about how we should have controlled them, but didn't. We learned more about the timing. We learned more about scouting. We already knew that aphid pressure like that was very, very rare and not likely to happen again. But after we just went through that, at the end of 2024, nobody was very interested in planting 114.99. We actually traded all ours away to get other stuff that we needed more because most people didn't want to plant it. A few of you, and God love you, stuck with it, which was our recommendation. Don't give up on it. It's a good hybrid. Aphids is a fluky deal. Probably not going to happen again in the lifetime of that hybrid. But, since you were not excited about planting it, our salesmen were afraid to sell it. Our dealers were afraid to sell it. And if you're afraid to sell it and you're not selling it, how much are you going to crop plan to sell the following year? Basically none. So we didn't ask for very much 114.99 to sell in 25. No, sorry, to sell in 26. Because we didn't know, because we're doing the crop plan for 26 at the end of 24, always a year behind. So 2025 comes along. Here's one mistake we made, and I've had several dealers point this out to me. Okay, we understand that you thought it was a good hybrid. We understand that you wanted to give it another chance. But why did you put it in every plot when you knew you didn't grow any? That's a fair criticism. Because what did it do in 2025? It won most of the plots it was in. It was absolutely freaking amazing. Even better than it had been when Chris and I first saw it in 23. So it was awesome in 23. I'll be honest, it sucked in 24. And it was a new level of awesome in 25. And if you go back in the breeding data, it was as good in 22 as it was in 23 and 25. So it's now had 3 outstanding years, 1 bad year due to kind of some fluky circumstances. And it was only bad in 24 where we had aphids. So Iowa didn't have a lot of aphid pressure. So Iowa sold the hell out of it in 25. They crop planned a bunch of it. Now, it was so good, not even they have enough, but they're sure as hell not going to share any of their supply with us, especially after I just insulted them for not being as good as us on soybeans. So anyway, so there are places in the country that are selling more 114.99 than we are because they asked to. We didn't ask to because of the aphid fiasco. So now, as we're going into 2027, it's been a long time since anybody's worried about an aphid now. Our memories are short, and now everybody's ready to, okay, let's go gung-ho on 114.99. And I think that's the right thing to do, but, how gung-ho do we get? Do we make it 5% of our supply, 10% of our supply, 15% of our supply, 20% of our supply? We can make it whatever we want to make it, assuming we've got the parent seed to produce that much of the commercial hybrid. That sometimes impacts things too, because this will really blow your mind. This even blows my mind. Our poor product management people, they have to do this even another year in advance because they have to look at their crystal ball and decide which inbreds to produce. So the following year, they can produce the hybrid that we want to sell the following year after that. So I'm glad I'm not involved in that. That sounds impossible. We do the best we can. When you can't get what you want, give somebody a little grace because it's very, very, very difficult. And we are in the midst right now of sitting down with all of our dealers saying, what do you think your farmers are going to want to buy in 2027? And that's what we're going to grow. And it will be wrong. But hopefully we will, we always have supply. People, this is like the number one, falsehood in the seed corn business. Oh, we don't have enough supply. We don't have enough supply. We always got plenty of corn. Everybody's got plenty of corn. We're just out of the 4 hot ones that everybody wants more of. We got gobs and gobs and gobs of the stuff you don't want. And we got to figure out, what we're going to do with all that inventory that's not selling itself these days. Now, some of those products will probably be the next $114.99, and they'll have a rebound year next year, and they'll be the ones we'll be sold out of next year because you don't want them this year. The moral of this story is if you've got 3 years of data that say one thing and 1 year of data that says something else, one should not trump 3. Go with the 3, and if you're going to ignore something, ignore the 1. But the trouble we have is if the 1 was the one you just saw on your farm this year, that dominates your mind, and that trumps everything else that we might tell you about a product. But we had hybrids this year that had an off year in 2025. So 114.43 didn't have its best year this year. 110.41 didn't have its best year this year. 66.06 actually did have one of its best years this year, but it depended on where you were in the state. So some places 66.06 was yielding 346 bushel for Trent Uphoff, and someplace else it really struggled with combination of tar spot, maybe root lodging from a summer windstorm, a lot of southern rust. So things vary as you travel around the state. Just like in 2024, aphid pressure varied as you traveled around the state. Kind of on the Interstate 74 corridor is where the aphids were the worst, down into Indiana. Iowa, not much of a thing. Southern Illinois, less of a thing. Northern Illinois, less of a thing. It was kind of a central Illinois, central Indiana phenomenon. And that's the geography where, the hybrids that aphids attacked worse really struggled. You got outside of that geography, those hybrids were performing very well. And people had a completely different experience with them. But, that's really, as an agronomist, what we try to do when we position hybrids is, that genotype by management, by environment, and try to predict that, try to manage that, try to influence that. That's impossible sometimes because Mother Nature is going to win that situation. But as the environment changes from year to year, location to location, that's what causes variation in product performance. And that's why you're talking to a friend of yours that farms 2 counties away, and you think something sucks, and it was the best thing he had. That's kind of the nature of the variability of growing things outside in the environment that is constantly changing and variable across locations. And speaking of the environment, we've had lots of we've had a wet winter so far. We've had a big rain event in December. We had a big rain event in January. So those of you that think soil recharge is absolutely vital to the success of your farm next year, that is happening. We've had lots of snow, all that melted, almost all that soaked in. We haven't had any really flooding or runoff events. I mean, when we had snow melting, when we had rain falling, we didn't have frost on the ground. So all that went in, soaked it all up. That's good. Now it's pretty cold out this morning, Heather, a little brisk out there. Now we're getting some frost on the ground. So those of you that think that you got to have a good deep freeze, recharge, we're getting all that stuff. So hopefully we'll roll into a 2026. Now the market report that we had earlier this week would say that we don't need to have a bumper crop in 2026. But those of us that are commodity producers, we want a bumper crop so that we can be profitable. And generally, when you're raising a commodity, especially if that commodity is not worth a fortune, you need to have the bushels. And so hopefully we'll have I think some people scoff at, really question the yield that we supposedly achieved this year. I do not, frankly. I mean, you remember all the talk in 2025 about how good a start we got off to and how awesome things looked and how good stuff was. And then the train kind of come off the tracks towards the end of the growing season. We We got smacked by southern rust. We got smacked by tar spot. A lot of people didn't have much rain the last 45 days of the growing season. And yet we had a lot of 240, 250, 260, 270, in some places 280 bushel corn. And that's not counting the NCGA yields. That's just normal people raising normal corn on a normal farm. And what that tells me is the potential that we had in this crop was scary good, because with lots of problems, it did what it did. If you took those problems away, I don't know how good it would have been, but it obviously would have been a lot better. And it was pretty damn good as it was. Top 5 crop for most people, best crop ever for some people, and in some areas. There were a few small pockets where it was, average or below average yields just due to horrific disease issues. But, one thing and I'm going to do a radio interview tomorrow with a friend of mine I'm on the interview as an agronomist. He's on the interview as a grain marketing person. And it'll be interesting to have this conversation with him, because I still think with your management and the genetics that you have available, I don't think it would be impossible for the U.S. average corn yield to start with a 2. And that might have happened this year if we would have finished stronger than we did. We came in at I think 186.5 or something like that. It's the latest estimate. That's not that far from 200, and a 200 national yield would make some people puke on their shoes, but that's not impossible, and we might have come pretty close to it this year, because a lot of you could have pretty easily raised 20 or 30 bushel an acre more than you did if you took away the things that were wrong. And if we ever get a year that starts off like last year and finishes strong, instead of we kind of stumbled across the finish line last year, I don't know what we could produce, but it's going to be a scary amount. So need to continue to, I know a lot of people out there looking for, new markets, new uses, other things we can do with our production, because we can certainly produce. We just got to find a home for everything that we produce. So I'm not a marketing expert. Do not take any advice from me. I will brag just a little bit. I am proud that my bins are empty. I've got no old crop left. It's all gone. So I feel bad for folks that were hoping for a rally out of this week's crop report to make some catch-up sales. So I'll be talking about that on the radio tomorrow with my marketing friend.
What radio station are you going to be on?
We will be, I think it will air on, they're just recording it tomorrow. Okay. So I think it will air on WGIL, AM 1400 out of Galesburg.
All right, I have questions. They're not from the chat, but I'm going to ask some questions.
Okay.
So, what we were talking about challenges over the last 2 years, would you still be? What are your concerns with aphids? Like, since we had so many aphids in 24,
right? And they were around in
25.
They were around in 25 too. Yeah, not near. They were later and much lower pressure.
I wasn't sure if we ever addressed that on the show, like we talked about it to give our viewers some.
We talked about it to the point where people asked me to quit talking about it on 24, but we didn't really touch on it 25. So aphids, cornleaf aphids are not new. Cornleaf aphids are not weird. Well, actually, they are weird, but the presence of them is not weird. They are here every year. They were here in 23. They were here in 24. They were here in 25. They will be here in 26. What made 25 unique was how early they were here. Yeah, 24. Thank you. I get dyslexic with my years. So what made 24 unique was how early they got here and the numbers that their population skyrocketed to. Aphids are, we studied them a lot after 24, talked to a lot of experts, and I learned a lot about aphids. They are a freaky little beast. I mean, God was pretty creative when he made aphids, because they're all female, no males. Heather's smiling like that would be good. There's some people out there trying to accomplish that today.
There are.
So they're all females, no males, and they're all born pregnant, if you can believe. So their population can explode rapidly. They also, this is a surprise to many, they also do not prefer hybrids with more sugar in them, which is, you're looking puzzled because, well, that's what everybody thinks.
Okay.
It's what everybody thinks. So actually, aphids do not suck sap out of plants looking for sugar. They suck sap out of plants looking for proteins, amino acids, and they get water and sugar along with a little bit of protein, amino acid. They've actually got a very special, it's called the hemipteran bypass, I think is what it's called. It's a special design in their gut that allows them to basically bypass their digestive system with all the water and sugar. And they excrete that, and that's the sticky mess that they leave in the field we call honeydew. If they didn't have that special gut chamber that allowed that stuff to bypass their digestive system and just excrete it out the back of the aphid, they would explode and die. So actually, that the reason that aphids do better on drought-stressed crops is they're deficient in water. And so the nutrition that they're getting from the plant is more concentrated. It's got less water in it. They have to get rid of the water, get rid of the sugar. They hang on to the proteins and amino acids, and that's really what they're going for. So there absolutely is something about certain hybrids that causes them to flourish and thrive on those hybrids, but it's probably related to some proteins and amino acids. It's not related to the sugar content of the hybrid.
Interesting. Also, I'll go on to another one that has been a concern from this year going into next year. To question, would you worry about southern rust?
So good question. So it does not overwinter here. So unlike tar spot, it's not here from day one every year. You know, tar spot's a concern every year for us now. It's here, it's staying here until we develop hybrids that are highly resistant to it, which are coming, by the way. That'll be exciting. Not next year, probably not the year after that, but relatively soon. We think we'll have a much higher level of resistance to tar spot. But tar spot does overwinter here, and so it's in our residue. Those spores will survive, and as soon as there's growing corn in 2026, it can start its life cycle all over again. Southern rust, I think, may have overwintered further. You know, there in a warm winter, will it overwinter further north than it does some years? You know, possibly, but it is going to start in the south. And it has to get bad in the south, produce a bunch of spores, and then you need storm fronts to move up through the Midwest, and southern rust gets to us on storms. And you can sometimes see, you know, where it's the worst, it actually follows the path of a storm that came up from the south. And the other thing that you've got to have so you got to have the spores in the south, get in the storm brings them up through the Midwest. And then when they start falling out of the sky, you need the right environment for them to infect and grow and get bad. And that's what we had last year. We were wet, humid. It was like a jungle here when those southern rust spores moved in, and they had the perfect environment for them. They just exploded. They had southern rust clear up into Minnesota. Iowa had southern rust worse than Illinois did. It was a nationally, southern rust was a bigger deal than tar spot last year. Now, from where we're setting north, tar spot was the primary issue. But I would say every corn plant grown in Illinois in 2025 had both southern rust and tar spot on it by the end of the season. It was just a matter of, was it 50-50? Was it 90-10? And from here south, it was more southern rust, less tar. From here north, it was more tar, less southern rust, but everybody had both. And then if you threw a little bit of crown rot in the root system for good measure, then things really come off the tracks. So
okay, I have 2 questions.
All right.
But since you just asked crown rot, this is from Green Farms. Thank you for the question in the chat. Last year, you mentioned evaluating crown rot trials.
Yes.
Do you have any updated recommendations for management? If using it in early fungicide application for management, what would be your ideal timing?
Okay. So what the results of our research continue to show is that I would say the 3 best management practices for crown rot management would be A, hybrid selection, B, planting date, C, a good tassel time fungicide program. So V5 the early fungicide application doesn't make the top 3, but it is on my list of things that will help. And the research that's being done in Nebraska and Iowa State and the observations that we make would indicate that infection gets into that root system when that plant's very small, kind of like SDS and soybeans. But by the time that plant's up, that infection might already be in that root system. Pretty confident that probably before you spray your V5, that plant is probably already infected with crown rot. I think most plants get infected with crown rot every year. It just depends on how susceptible is the hybrid, and then the growing conditions that happen the rest of the season do a lot to determine, does that plant live out a normal life with an infection, or does the stress that it goes through during grain fill, cause that infection to get worse and destroy the root system and take the plant out? So I don't know that there's a lot of data out there to indicate is V4, V5, V6, V7, V8, what is if you're going to make a separate pass for that application and you're going to decouple it from your herbicide application, you can spray the fungicide kind of anytime. You can't spray the herbicide anytime. So generally, we're spraying most early fungicide applications as a tank mix with a herbicide, and that means it's going on relatively small corn, as small as you can get away with. Generally, we would say that if the corn is smaller than V4, it's not going to catch enough fungicide to justify the expense. Although if you're using a generic product in that pass, that fungicide is very inexpensive. So, I don't really know what the benefit of foliar fungicide is on V2 corn. Generally, we say V4, V5 is the sweet spot because that's when it's big enough to catch enough fungicide to have a benefit, and it's still small enough to post spray with most post programs. I do know some growers that are making a separate pass that are waiting till the corn plant is more like V6, V7, maybe V8 to spray their foliar. And if you want to pair it with some foliar fertilizer, you want to do some other stuff with it, it is a bigger plant, you can get more product in it. I think whether you spray your corn at V4, V5, V6, V7, it's already infected with crown rot. And the benefit of that fungicide application on that small corn is not a direct one. It's an indirect one, because no matter what fungicide you use, fungicides do not travel from the leaf to the roots. You are going to get no movement of whatever fungicide you apply into the root system if you spray it on the plant foliarly. So we are not controlling crown rot infections with a V5 fungicide application directly, but we do help that plant feel better, alleviate stress on that plant. Maybe you control some anthracnose leaf blight. You do improve stalk quality on those plants. We have measured that. But as far as a direct reduction in crown rot infections, not really. I still think, given the cost is relatively low, I still think a V5, V4, V5, V6, whatever time you want to do, is a good investment, especially if you're planting corn early. If you're planting corn after the 1st of May, there's still a benefit there, but I don't think it's as great of a benefit. So I don't want to oversell the benefits of a V5 on crown rot specifically, but we do see benefits from a V5 in Northern Illinois this past year. Heather knows this. You guys saw some tar spot suppression from a V5 application, which is unusual, and that was a combination of how early tar spot got started, and I think it was a little more common to see that in Northern Illinois because you were spraying, your V5 went on later than Central Illinois did, and the tar spot got there earlier. So the further north you go, maybe the more likely you are to get some other disease suppression out of that early application. The other thing to be aware of is just in full disclosure, we are asked not to make more than 2 applications of strobilurin and fungicides in one season, and that's the strobe class. So even if you use 3 different strobies, you're not supposed to do that, and that's for disease resistance management purposes. So check your labels and make sure you're not accidentally doing something off label. There are also rate restrictions on those earlier foliar applications on some products. So we talk about 12 ounces of Delaro a lot at tassel time. You can't put 12 ounces on a V5 corn plant, not that you would want to, but it's not labeled either. Another question, Heather?
Yes, from Agger838, do we have crown rot hybrid ratings?
Not in the seed guide, not numeric rating. So I don't give a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 rating, but we absolutely know which ones are good, which ones are bad, and which ones are average. And we do share that information with our sellers, with our dealers. So any seller or dealer that is well trained on our products could tell you which hybrids you would want to plant if you're trying to plant hybrids that are more tolerant to crown rot.
Okay, another question.
Awesome.
This is coming from the phone, but a texting.
Okay.
From Rachel.
All right.
You could have
cool.
had your
cool.
sharing, but
yeah.
Rachel is also doing a lot of the new product rollouts in up north where we have a lot more tar spot maybe than we have down here.
That's right.
There are some concerns or questions or frustrations that we aren't just getting new tar spot hybrids just immediately, right?
Yes.
Can you walk through why that is, but then yet why is it taking so long to get to these new hybrids, but yet at the same time, are we seeing some improvements in tar spot tolerances, like smaller improvements or step changes as we're bringing out new hybrids?
So Rachel, you should be careful asking questions that you're more qualified to answer than I am. But I'll take a stab here. So honestly, I would say we've made some pretty large improvements from where we were 5 years ago to where we are today in tar spot tolerance already. The reason it seems to be and I don't really personally consider it's taking that long to get there, considering the fact we started from a base of all corn is super susceptible to tar spot. We've been breeding for resistance to southern rust and gray leaf spot and all that kind of stuff for 40 years or more. So you really can't compare the level of resistance we have to a new problem to what we have to an old problem because we just haven't had as much time. So finding those sources of resistance, you got to find them first before you can integrate them into germplasm. And you can't integrate them into a hybrid. You can only integrate them into inbreds. And those inbreds have to work through the system. So, I think, by breeding standards, I honestly think that we have made strides very quickly to improve tar spot resistance. And from what I know from Rachel, ironically, we're getting closer to a level of resistance that's far superior to what's out there today. And how long that resistance will last, who knows? It's diseases have the ability to overcome genetic resistance, and so this battle will probably. It's not like we're going to find something and then fixed. You're going to have to keep finding new stuff to stay ahead of the disease. northern cornleaf blight is we've had very good resistance to northern cornleaf blight to the point where it's almost not even a thing. But there are races of northern cornleaf blight that are overcoming some of the genetic resistances. So you gotta keep finding new stuff. And so I think we did pay special attention as we were advancing new products. We really worked hard to bring out stuff that was better than where we're at on tar spot. And we are releasing several new hybrids that are improvements. Now, they're not immune. They're not resistant to the level that the grower would like them to be resistant. But, the stuff that we were using as susceptible checks in our trials 2 or 3 years ago, that stuff's getting weeded out.
Perfect.
So
Rachel is happy.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Rachel. I have a hard time making women happy sometimes, so it's always nice when I can. Appreciate the question, and we'll have Rachel on probably multiple times through the years as a guest host. She's I think some of my best episodes are when she's on with me, and she's got her dealers are actually I'm getting, and probably because of the time she's been on, I get more her dealers watching than I do mine sometimes. So I guess that hers don't have to listen to me as often, so it's kind of refreshing, I guess.
You're a breath of fresh air.
That's right. Okay, so appreciate the questions. Anything else, Heather?
There are no other
Okay, I think we're probably past time. Yeah, we're right on actually. So considering we got started a little bit late, we're right on time. So appreciate those of you who were able to find us and stuck with us. And if you weren't here for the drama, consider yourself fortunate. And we'll be back with you in a couple weeks, which is probably like the 29th of December.
December, no, we're in January.
Oh shoot, January.
But it is the 29th of
Okay,
January.
right day, wrong month.
Yes, 29th of January, we'll be back.
Okay, so we'll be back 29th of January. Not real sure about this whole live episode from Commodity Classic, but we'll be talking about that more. And we'll be back here in Monmouth most likely in 2 weeks, and answering your questions at that time. So thanks, Heather, for being here with us, and thanks you all for watching, and everybody stay warm.